Hello and welcome to the newest episode of Mole in Hell, number 5. My name is ChaosMole, and welcome back to your Diablo 4 podcast. This time we have a lot to discuss, but before we jump into the patch notes for the beta, if you're like, wait, patch notes? Yes, Blizzard actually released some patch notes, but we will talk about that in just a minute. And then our main topic for today will be what's left of Diablo 3. But before we get into that, a few things I want to talk about quickly. First things first, thank you very much everyone who has been listening or watching the podcast. I really do appreciate that. It means a lot to me, and there's definitely more to come. So yeah, again, thank you so much for that. Second, if you're wondering that we actually had a podcast last week, even though I said I'm now pushing it more into 2-week turnover, the answer is Blizzard is actually pushing out content for Diablo 4, and I'm really happy about it because there's always a lot to talk about. So if they can keep this up to release, then we have actually a podcast every week. If they are slowing down too much, then I will also slow it down to 2 weeks till we are then up to the weekly turnover again when we're getting closer to the release, right? And the last thing I want to say, if you enjoy this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel or like the video or whatever you're doing on your podcast channels. There is far more to come, and there's already quite a bit of content here on the channel regarding Diablo 4. So if you're looking for that, please don't forget to do it and look a little bit around. Maybe you're finding some cool and interesting videos. Now, with that said, let's talk about the Diablo 4 open beta patch notes. Believe it or not, Blizzard actually put something out there. And I will not talk about the normal stuff here. What I want to talk about is immediately I want to talk about the changes, because they are quite some substantial changes. It's not like they're changing the game, but I will be honest, I kind of expected Blizzard to do a Blizzard. This, oh yeah, we heard your concerns, and we definitely listening, but we will not fix anything to the release, and maybe with the first big patch we might have some changes for you. We will see, right? Like, unfortunately, it is something relatively common in the gaming industry, and yes, Blizzard has been doing it for years. So wouldn't have been surprised if that is the case, but we actually get some substantial changes for Diablo 4 already before the release. So, let's talk about the first one, and that is dungeons. And the first thing they're talking about here is the dungeon layouts. If you might remember, a lot of people have been complaining that the dungeon layouts were very repetitive, not really that interesting, and more important, there was so much backtracking, right? It's this, you had to destroy some altars. I still remember that because it happened to me quite a bit. And then you missed like one slight corner where the altar would be. And you were still like going till the end of the dungeon, and you thought, okay, at the end of the dungeon, that's where the last altar is. And so I will get that later on, right? And then you reached the end boss chamber, and it's like, nope, sorry bro, can't let you get in here. You still haven't destroyed the last altar, which is at the beginning of the dungeon. Please walk back and destroy that thing. And it was like, oh no. It was not great. So first things first, they will change the layouts of, I think, half of the dungeon in Act 1. Like, it's quite a bit. I have to say, this is the problem we will see when we are getting further into the game, because we were only able to play test Act 1, which, by the way, I see as a big mistake by Blizzard, but not the first time they're doing it, but I'm completely against it, just giving us, like, what was it, 20% of the game or something like that. Big mistake. And we will see that when the release happens, Now they have fixed some of the dungeons in Act 1. We will probably see similar issues in the other acts with the dungeons, and they have to fix them again. And it's like, why didn't you do that before? Like, why haven't you? Okay, whatever. It is what it is. Right. The next thing they're talking about is dungeon events, and the chance for an event to spawn inside of a dungeon has increased from 10% to 60%. Yeah, good. I remember I did all the dungeons which were available in Act 1, even the ones which are locked behind side quests or main quests. And then I had 3 events in total out of 25 dungeons. I had 3 events. That's that's not great. It's kind of hilarious to me because this reminds me of Diablo 3. Diablo 3 had the same problem at the beginning. That people were looking for events and they had to do like 100 dungeon runs to finally get the event they wanted to get. And they did the same thing again in Diablo 4. Now, thankfully, they fixed it actually now before the release and not like Diablo 3, which happened way after the release, right? But yeah, they also talk about the dungeon gameplay, as I already said. They will talk about the backtrack and small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out players to hate complete the kill all monster objective. Thank you. I'm actually playing some Diablo 3 right now again. And whenever I see like an objective which is like kill all the monsters in the dungeon, it's like, I hate it here. No, I hate that objective so much. I hate it so much because it's always like one monster hiding in the corner which didn't want to be found. It's horrible. But yeah, they also increased the amount of stuff you had to find in the dungeon. Like when you find a cube and you have to bring that back, you will be faster, you get a movement speed buff, you are gaining more resources you have to collect. So they basically speeded up all the events and all the things in the dungeon, which is great. Look, at the beginning, I can see that a lot of people don't have a problem with it, but the dungeons are very repetitive. Even after playing just all the dungeons which were available in Act 1, I felt like, yeah, I have done this now often enough. I'm now in auto mode, and I'm just trying to zoom as quickly as possible through the dungeons. So don't make it harder for me. Don't make it harder for me. Just make it quicker. It's one of the great strengths of Diablo 3, in my opinion. We will talk a little bit about that later. But as I said, like Diablo 3 had this quick play where I could throw in a rift or a bounty for like 5-10 minutes or so and get something done, right? And I would like to keep that pace. So this brings us immediately to the biggest of all the changes, and that is class balance. Yeah, believe it or not, they are trying to balance the classes before the release. And keep in mind, this is all based on feedback from the beta, which only did go to level 25. I have to admit, it's a little bit weird that they made some changes to some of the classes right now. But then again, you could argue, will a build change that much when it is already OP at level 25 when you reach max level? Because the only thing which happens is you actually become even stronger because you have more talent points to give. You also have more legendaries / uniques or set items even, which makes you even stronger. My point is, you will only get stronger from this point on. And at level 25, there were already some builds which were kinda disgusting when it came to the DPS. So I can see why, but it's still interesting that they did it. So let's talk about the general changes here. Effects like stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long before they become unstoppable. Good. Still, I wouldn't use stun or freeze in boss fights. So I still don't think that those builds will be used too much in PvE, right? Reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove control impairing effects. Yes, we already saw that some classes have a lot of CC and also have like a lot of abilities which would make them get out of crowd control. And then there were classes where we were just like, do you have anything? Nope. And I know that some people might think, wait, yeah, crowd control is only important for PvP, right? No, it's not. Like in PvE, there are actually quite a bit of abilities which will bound you to a certain spot. And you have to get the hell out of there, or you will get annihilated. So, no, it is important. Many legendary powers have updates to their effectiveness. So this is a bit vague. This could also mean that they nerfed some of the legendaries or they increased the power of some. I think it will be a healthy mix, and the effectiveness we have seen in the beta will not really be what we'll see in release. Will it be positive? Will it be negative? I don't know. I really don't. Let's talk about the specific classes. The first one is the Barbarian, and a flat 10% passive damage reduction has been added for the Barbarian class. Some skill tree passives had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. This is funny. I saw some people not understanding this and think the Barbarian got nerfed by 10%. That is not the case. The Barbarian didn't get nerfed. What they are doing is they give him flat 10% damage reduction, and then some of the skills who had damage reduction got that reduced because of the flat damage reduction. So that means you will get 10% damage or less damage than you did before, no matter what. And you don't need certain skills for that anymore, which makes sense. One of the problems the Barb has, especially in early game, you don't feel that tanky. Later on, when you have the equipment and all that, and when you reach like level, I felt like with level 13, level 15, it got better. But till that point, man, the Barbarian was just couldn't really take like a lot of hits, which, as somebody is always at the front, it's a bit weird, not gonna lie. The Whirlwind skill now deals more damage and consumes more fury. Makes sense. I don't know if this was purely because people didn't want it to do or didn't want to use Whirlwind, but I didn't saw a lot of people using any Whirlwind. Not a lot of people did it, and I don't know if they just didn't do it because, again, Whirlwind, like everyone is using Whirlwind all the time with the Barb. I don't like that. Or if this was really just, man, this was shit. The damage I'm doing is not really great. Right? I don't know what the reason was for it. Double Swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. That's clearly a buff. And that's good, I guess. Yeah. Cool. It's a small thing, but still nice. Druid. Yeah, let's talk about the Druid. Companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. My god. I played the druid first, and when I had my companions, I felt like they were so useless. They didn't feel great. Then I played the necromancer because I was like, oh boy, and here's another pet class where probably the pets are pretty much useless. And the necromancer pets are just slaying everything, and you go like crazy with those pets. And then you look back at the druid with the pets, and you just feel sorry for the dude. Because the druid didn't make as much damage with its companions than like a necromancer could. And it's kind of unfortunate. I would have hoped to see more like a pet class druid at some point. So this is good. All ultimate skills had the cooldown reduced. Good. Again, thought it was too high for the damage it did. So they could have increased the damage, or they could have reduced the cooldown. I choose the cooldown. I'm okay with it. Usability improvements have been made to pulverize. I don't know exactly what that means, but I have an inkling. I had quite a bit of moments with those abilities where it just didn't respond. I used the ability and my druid was looking at me like, what I'm supposed to do right now? What? It was weird. Like it's like as if my mouse was not registering the attacks. I cannot even fully explain it, but I know it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. Using a non-shifting, shape-shifting skill would transform a druid back into their human form. Didn't they do that already? Wait. I could have sworn they already did that, but maybe I'm wrong. Necromancers. Oh boy. Necros, you have to be very, very strong right now. Summoned minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't like a lot when the minions died, even though I have to say, at around level 25, if you were not skilling into your minions, I felt like the minions became less buff. So it's kind of weird that they saw this as an issue. I wonder how it goes in the later levels. Yeah. Many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stat increased. I very much hope so, because all the bonuses were more like, oh yeah, well, that's neat. Okay. Like some bonuses were not even worth the hustle. Like I remember the bone mages, which would like sacrifice their own health to do more damage, and I was doing some testing, and was trying to just see what the difference is, right? And I think my bone mages did like 20 more damage or so. It was laughable. It was laughable for them at just dying after 4 or 5 attacks. Wasn't worth it. So yeah, I hope they did something there. The damage dealt by the corpse explosion skill has been reduced. No. Really? You mean the corpse explosion skill, which could one-shot waves of enemies and basically 3-shot some bosses? The corpse explosion? Don't say it's so. And before people start with, yeah, but you need corpses. You don't always have. You can create corpses with the necromancer easily. It's not a problem. And especially because you never needed the corpses to resummon your skeletons. You had a lot of those lying around. And again, the damage you could just deliver with it was out of this world. It was completely broken. If you have never tried the corpse explosion skill in the open beta, you have missed out. It's insane what you could do. The brightness of the skeletal warriors and mages has been reduced. Okay. Okay. Cool. Rogue. This is interesting. this is interesting. What we did here, from the people who really put some time into the rogue, they said the rogue, the moment you started to master the movability of that class, was sickening. I mean, there is a video where a single rogue basically defeated the world boss alone. So, bit weird that the rogue is getting buffed. Upgrades for the subterfuge skill have had their bonuses increased. Okay, that makes sense. No, that makes actually sense. Because if there was one thing most rogues did not skill, were any of the upgrades for the subterfuge. They weren't that great. They were super specific, and they were not really helping you. And the stats were too weak. So, cool. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I also don't remember taking any of those. All imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased. Yeah. Imbuements. Like you basically had the imbuements on all the time, right? Like there wasn't a single time where I thought, oh man, if my imbuement would just be up at this point. The thing is, it was. So, yeah, makes sense. Again, Sorcerer. Wow. Charged bolt damage has increased and the mana cost to cast has decreased. Yeah, because nobody used that skill. Sorry. For PvE, nobody used that skill. Was not worth it. Decreased the damage of chain lightning and reduced its effectiveness against bosses. I have the feeling this is Blizzard shooting a little bit at the wrong target here. They are barking up the wrong tree. Yes, chain lightning is really strong, especially without uniques. But the things I could do with certain fire builds I was trying out, that was obnoxious. So I agree that chain lightning needed a hit, especially because without uniques it was too strong. But it also feels kind of like, especially later on, the moment you're starting, you get to your first uniques. I don't see chain lightning being too much ahead of anyone else. Decrease the cooldown of the incinerate skill enchantment bonus. Oh, cool, nice. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus. Okay, Firewall was pretty strong in PvE if you set them right, so cool. I already thought that firewalls were pretty much OP at that point, but sure, let's make them stronger. No problems with that. Increase the lucky hit chance for the meteor skill enchantment bonus. Weird. So the thing with lucky hit is, a lot of people didn't understand how it works. And more importantly, there was not enough equipment, I think, to really get your lucky hit chance up. So buffing lucky hit chance, even if it's just for one skill, I don't know yet. I would wait. This is actually a thing I would wait, because a lot of people, they will not use lucky hit. They don't understand what lucky hit is, because it's kind of convoluted, and a lot of people will not look at that at this point, right? So, yeah. All right. What else did they do? They just fixed some UI and some encounters. They fixed the butcher, and apparently they made the butcher a little bit stronger. They did nerf to Short, Malnog, and Venard. Those were the melee bosses in the dungeons. And man, they were just shit. The problem with them have been that they have been using their abilities too much, and as a melee fighter, it was completely horseshit to fight against them. I'm sorry. It was no fun. The only fun I then had was when I was running a Thorn build with my Gladiator. Yeah. So, good. No, seriously. Good. Fix them. Sellers. Increase the chance for a dungeon event to occur in Sellers. Sellers will now consistently reward a chest upon completion. Good. Because at the end of the beta, people were already debating if the loading screen was worth what you could find in those sellers. Like, it just happened too often that you really started to reevaluate a seller and if it would be worth your time. And again, the loading screen into a seller is not long. It takes, oh god, what was it? Maybe like 2 or 3 milliseconds. Like not even a second sometimes. But still, people felt like till you get till the end of the cellar, then you would kill the 5 monsters which would be in there, and you didn't really get anything out of it. I'm not saying that they have to throw the uniques at you or the set items or anything, but at least give me something, right? It was, yeah, good for them. Good for them. General quality of life fix. Oh yeah, there's something I want to talk about here. Fixed an issue where players could increase attack speed by move cancelling attacks early. Thank you for that. I get some PTSD flashbacks here. So what they are talking about is animation cancelling. And what that basically does, if you have never heard of it, you are doing an attack. Let's say you are doing a big jump with your barb, with the sword, and you are still in the animation of landing, but you can interrupt that animation and already do something else in the air while you would still deliver the damage of that skill, even if you cancel it. This opens up some really big damage spikes, and it's always dangerous. I have seen this once. Why do I say it's a PTSD thing? League of Legends. So in League of Legends, there was a character who got introduced many years ago called Riven. And she had a jump attack. And so she was out for a while. She was doing okay. And then Riot Games noticed that the popularity of Riven was rising. And people were winning with her. And they were confused because they didn't touch her in months. So what happened? And they saw some insane damage spikes in her Q ability, which didn't make sense to them at the time because, again, they didn't touch her. They didn't improve her. So they were trying to figure out if something else in the game changed. And nothing did. So they had to look at it, and they saw that people did the animation cancelling. She was still in the air. You could interrupt it with an item who would then play its animation, and that would override the in the air animation, but both would deliver their damage, and it would allow you to get faster out of situations you don't want to be in. And you know what Riot Games did? They didn't fix it. They were nerfing Riven. They were like, oh my god, that is so cool. That is so amazing. Okay, but we cannot really allow this. But we want to keep it in, so we would just nerf her in general. And for the people who are doing the animation cancelling, nothing would change. But for the people who didn't do the animation cancelling, you would do less damage now. So they basically punished the people who didn't do the whole move cancelling attacks Blizzard is talking about. And I hated that. So they were basically buffing the pros, and they were nerfing. It's not even pros, it's just people who wouldn't go to YouTube, who wouldn't watch live streams to improve their playstyle. They would fall behind because they couldn't know about this. So I'm glad that Blizzard is immediately saying, no, we don't want that in our game. I'm really happy with that. So yeah, that was the patch notes, and they were quite substantial. Like, I have to admit, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect this. Not at all. I would have said, like, as I said early on, I would have thought that Blizzard is just doing the bare minimum, and then they will see how the release goes. But that they have been actually as active as they have been, it's pretty remarkable, and I'm all for it. Like, this is amazing. Also, they acted relatively fast, right? Like, they were super fast. When was the beta? 2 weeks ago? Nearly 3 weeks ago? Yeah. And they already have those substantial changes. That's good. That keeps me hopeful for the release and for the issues which will be there. Let's face it. There will be issues. It's a Blizzard game. Come on, folks. We all have been there. But yeah, this keeps me positive. That Blizzard will actually address issues quickly and things which might be requested by the community. So good for them. Quick note. I just decided that we will not do the other part because that would be quite a bit of extra time. We have already put in over half an hour into the podcast, and I don't really want to make this in 1 hour, 1.5 hour long podcast as some people do. So I would say we are talking about that next week. Yeah, another next week schedule till something else is happening. It seems like the Blizzard is always releasing some new information on Friday evening. Let's see if they keep it up. But yeah, we got the endgame video last week on Friday. So we got the patch notes this week on Friday. So assume we are getting something else next week. I'm kind of curious about it. I really am. If they can keep this up, which would be impressive in my opinion. So good for them. Good for me, because I have more to talk about. Great. But yeah, I will be back next week on Monday, even though I always record them on Sunday evenings. But yeah, I will be back next week on Monday with the next podcast. And so far the plan is that we are talking about the things Diablo 3 did right in the endgame. Should be fun. With that said, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or wherever, do the thing there if you want to get more of the podcasts. And as I said, make sure to check out the other content we have here on the channel. Also, don't forget that this is not my main channel, even though I'm treating it more and more like a main channel. You can also find me at youtube.com/ChaosMoleFX or just at ChaosMole. There's my live streaming channel where I do just a lot of random stuff sometimes. And then we have youtube.com/@MoleUnderManagement. That is my strategy channel where I'm talking about a lot of strategy, management, building games, do reviews. Age of Wonders is one of my, Age of Wonders 4, which is coming out in May, is actually one of my major focus points right now on the channel. And if you want to check that out, you love strategy games, turn-based, building, whatever, you should check it out. It's a lot of fun, and it's very cozy and relaxing. So, hope to see you somewhere there, or stop by at one of my live streams. I'm doing from Monday to Friday, starting at 8 a.m. ET, that is 1 p.m. UK time, and 2 p.m. Central European time. I've been streaming for, 7 years now? Oh man, time is flying. Check that out. We're a helpful and respectful community. A little bit on the older side, but hey, who doesn't get older? But yeah, with that said, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. And also, welcome to hell.